Hello and welcome to the Route 1 show here live on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. I'm Steven Browne and joining me as ever is Chris Bell. Good evening, Mr. Bell.
How are we, mate? You all right?
I'm good. How are you? How are you?
Yes, not too bad. Not too bad at all.
Good stuff. Yeah, we've got lots coming on. We're looking at Bradford City, Leeds United, Huddersfield Town tonight on the West Yorkshire football show. Lots to discuss. Mixed fortunes for our teams across the region. We'll be chatting with Simon Parker from the Telegraph and Argus very shortly about everything to do with the Bantams. We've got Sporting Life's Tom Carnduff on probably about 6:30 to chat to us about all things Leeds United. And then we're going to finish up with Steve Downs at 7:30 to talk us through everything to do with Huddersfield Town. One result that caught my eye from last night, Chris, Bradford Park Avenue, another team obviously we cover here on the Route 1 show. We're going to be chatting with Lewis Sale about the Avenue tomorrow, but an absolutely shocking result. I mean, it was one of those results when I saw it is you can't lose 4-0 to Telford at the bottom of the table. I mean, especially Farsley won as well. So
yeah, it's
terrible.
It's looking a little bit bleak, isn't it, for Park Ave at the moment? Off the back of kind of mid-season upturn of form when they've started to pull themselves a little bit away from danger. In recent weeks, they have sadly well and truly slumped back into it. And last night, 4-0 for Telford. They're at the bottom of the league. They were, I think, still 10 points behind Avenue now, despite that win. They've been a bit of the whipping boys of the National League North this season. And for them to put 4 past Avenue last night is a hugely frustrating result for the supporters and obviously for Mark Bauer as well. And look, we've said about there being a little bit of pressure on at times for Mark Bauer over the course of the season. Obviously, he signed that new, long-term 3-year extension in the summer. But look, as Lewis said, and it's not like Lewis to be a little bit gun-ho in his approach. He was, on both social media, on Facebook and Twitter, he was like, something needs to change. It'll be interesting to find out exactly what he thinks has to change when he's on tomorrow with us. But yeah, a bitterly disappointing result. For Farsley, though, who the hell saw that coming? 2-1 win at high-flying Kings Lynn. Very few teams go to Kings Lynn and take any points, let alone all 3. And for Farsley in their situation and scrapping amongst them along with Avenue, it was a great result for them. Really great result for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And they always have a result like that in them, don't they, Farsley, as well? I mean, I know they were kind of complaining previous week, they're playing well, not taking the chances, but they certainly did then. And, going back to Avenue, it's just not been a good season for them at all, has it? You just felt like the team was kind of not really ready at the start of the season. A lot of players coming in on trial, trying to get players in to make the numbers up. It's just never quite caught fire for them, has it?
Exactly. It's, if you think back to pre-season when the fixtures came out and, I kind of tongue-in-cheek said to Lewis, the first winnable fixture is that Curzon Ashton game, and didn't actually expect that would be their first win of the season. 12 games in, I think it was, there or thereabouts. And I'd say kind of off the back of that, they picked things up a bit, but it just they've had so many situations where players have come in on loan initially, have done well to start with, and then been recalled by the parent club, or the loan's expired, and for whatever reason it's not been extended. So they've had to go back into the loan market and constantly replacing the loans all season long as Bowser. So, it's just been an overall disappointment, and one that is at this stage, with that bit of a points gap and the fact that they've played more games now, 1 or 2 more in most cases, than the sides directly above them and above the bottom 4, it's looking sketchy to say the least with so few games to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And do come back to the channel tomorrow because we'll be chatting with Mr. Bradford Park Avenue, Lewis Sale, all about Bradford Park Avenue. Plus, we'll see what he has to say about Farsley now leapfrogging them. And he'll also be casting his eye across Guiseley and Liversedge as well. Across the region, then, Huddersfield Town, they got a 0-0 draw last night against Bristol. I mean, it's an improvement after 2 4-0 back-to-back defeats. But it's lifted them off the bottom. But I mean, it's a really bad situation. I mean, they're 6 points now off Cardiff. It's not looking good for the Terriers, is it?
No, not great. I watched the first half. I thought, just so that I'd kind of be a little bit more informed than normal, shall we say, when it comes to talking to Steve later on. I thought I'll watch it because it was on the red button on Sky at half time, if I'm honest. It was a spectacle, and by the sounds of it, switching off at half time, I obviously didn't miss anything anyway. But I mean, nobody saw that absolute tonking they got from Birmingham City coming at home at the weekend. That was a massive surprise. I genuinely looked at that and thought there's a good chance for Huddersfield to win there and get back on track.
Yeah.
Boy, we were on that front.
Yeah, not good at all, was it? I mean, I was chatting to Steve last week about it, and I think he was a bit pessimistic about it. He wasn't too sure because I know Coventry had been going pretty well. I mean, Coventry now, I mean, they're absolutely flying up to 8th and, shout at the playoffs for them. And we're going to be chatting with Simon Parker very shortly from the Telegraph and Argus all about Bradford City. We've also got Tom Carnduff chatting to us about Leeds United at past, and another poor result for Leeds at the weekend, Chris.
I mean, I didn't want to bring it up too soon for you, mate, because I imagine it's still raw. But equally, you know what? I think Chelsea were going to have a bit of an upturn at some point, and you've done them a favour there because on the back of that, obviously that great win for them last night in the Champions League against Dortmund. So, yeah. But from a Leeds perspective, I mean, will you ever score again?
I know, blimey, it's not looking promising at the moment. Anyways, we're going to move on now. We're going to take a look at Bradford City and the Bantams, and we're going to be joined now by Simon Parker from the Bradford Telegraph and Argus. We can't see him, but Simon, are you there?
I am.
Hey!
Well, you can't see me, but I am here. Yeah, definitely.
People who've only read you in the Telegraph or Argus, they won't know what you sound like. They'll be thinking we're just making it up and we've got anyone on pretending to be you. Simon, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm actually still on the M6 thanks to Highways England, to be honest.
Oh,
their transport episode last night was entertaining. Any poor so-and-so went to Walsall has probably only just got back because it was ridiculous on the way home. Junction shut and diversions round Stoke and exit shut when you want to get off this end. It was all good fun. Adds to the rich tapestry of the football season.
Absolutely, and things have been much improved. I think the last time we spoke, I think City were on a tiny little bit of a slump, if I remember correctly. But obviously, they had those 3 wins back to back. We'll start with the game at the weekend, beating Colchester 2-0. Left it late, but it was nonetheless great.
Yeah, and I mean those are the sort of wins you remember all season, aren't they? It's that's what makes football worthwhile. You get a game like that where it looked like they weren't going to break through. It was a frustrating afternoon. We've had several of them at Valley Parade, and you're sort of thinking, here we go again in front of such a great crowd. The £5 ticket offer, getting the record crowd for Valley Parade for the 4th tier game, 20,000, and it was all set up for a big home win, and of course it wasn't happening. Suddenly you get the stoppage time, and up steps the main man himself. Bang, 1-0, then sets up the second goal, and it's the roof came off the place. It was fantastic, and also justice because the goals in added time, and a lot of that added time was based on the fact that Colchester were rinsing every second from about the 5th minute onwards. So for once it was nice to see what goes around comes around a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned there Andy Cook as well, and that was his 100th appearance, wasn't it, for the club? I mean, what a season, what a player.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 42 goals for the club as well, which is not bad strike rate, is it? 22 for the season now, 19 in the league, which puts him 2 clear of Sam Hoskins and Christian Dennis. So he's leading that one, and he's just having an incredible year. And it was almost classic Cook on Saturday. This season he'd had very little all game. He'd been very quiet. He'd been nullified by Colchester, and then suddenly, great corner from Harry Chapman, right where he wants it, and he comes soaring in above the lot, bang, 1-0. And that's his job, isn't it? And it was just written in the stars, wasn't it? On his 100th game, he was always going to do something, and for it to be such an iconic moment and to score at that time as well just made it extra special.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone else who impressed you as well, Brad Halliday as well.
Yeah, he's played very well. I mean, he's a bit of a left backs and right backs, they're not sexy, are they? It's sort of they do the hard yards, as they say, but so a lot of their work probably won't get acknowledged. You're thinking, oh, he's steady and that, but I've been impressed with him throughout. He's been part of a defence that has conceded very few goals, and he also likes to get forward and he delivers a decent cross. And he's he's become an integral part, and certainly with the way they line up, with this sort of narrow midfield where the onus is on the fullbacks to get forward. Him and Liam Rydell have to do a lot of running, a lot of covering, a lot of yards up and down, and getting that ball in. And he's been excellent. He's been solid throughout, and I just think he's getting better and better. And that's the experience. When you get into sort of the nitty gritty of the season, you got characters like that. Know what they're doing, and it fills you with confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just watching on the highlights, you could just hear the roar when City scored, and the season tickets went on sale, didn't they, as well?
Yeah.
And what a terrific advert for it, like you mentioned in your article for the TNA.
Well, I was going to say, they want to sort of bottle that atmosphere and use it every day for that advert, don't they? Because it was a perfect bill for the fact they kept the prices at the same price, and I've got to say that's a great effort. We were at Walsall last night and seeing their ticket prices for next season. I mean, I think they've got an early bird offer, which is still quite extortionate, but the actual ticket price goes to over 500 quid watching League Two football, which is ridiculous. And you bear in mind you get one at Valley Parade between now and April the 24th, and it's 198, and that could be for League One football. Worst case scenario, it's still League Two football, but it's 300 odd quid cheaper than watching Walsall.
Yeah. It's bonkers, isn't it? Really, when you consider obviously cost of living crisis and everything like that. For
exactly.
the average
that's the thing with City. They sort of. I think we've said it before. Bradford's not the most affluent city, but the football club recognises that. Rather than pricing people out of things and just sort of saying, they've got rising bills. Obviously, they've had to put some of the bills up in the suites. The banqueting suites, because obviously they've got the heating bills and the lighting bills, and that obviously they're going through the roof as well, as we all know. But to keep it at that price, for general admission, I think has been a really good effort, and I'm sure it will get a great response again.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to last night, then, Walsall. You've already mentioned the journey there and back, but what was the game like? It didn't sound like a classic.
No, it wasn't. To be honest. The cold light of day, Mark Hughes said at the time, and looking at it, it's not a bad point, because on the face, people will argue, Walsall haven't won since New Year's Day. They've only lost twice. They've had 10 games since, 8 draws, 2 defeats or something. It's that they don't concede goals. They've got the same defensive record as City have. So, if you're looking at it from the outside, you think, well, this is going to be very low scoring. It's going to be very tight. And also, Michael Flynn had ripped into them at the weekend after they were very poor at home to Barrow. So, you thought, well, they need to react. They're at home. They've got to show something. So you knew they were going to come out and obviously put a lot more into it than perhaps they had at the weekend. So all things considered, it wasn't a great performance. Not glossing over that. No shots on target is a very frustrating figure. But again, Andy Cook, header against the bar, that goes in 1-0 up, literally from City's first attack after Walsall had sort of gone at them for the first 15 minutes. It could have been a very different story, but ultimately it was very resolute defending. We seem to say this all the time with this side. I think Walsall game plans seem to be win throw-ins and just hurl it in the box, a bit like sort of old, not quite Ben Tozer style, but they had the Knowles was a very good player. He had a very good game, but he's also got a long throw in his armoury, which they basically utilised at every opportunity. So it was a case of diligently heading everything away, blocking the second ball, making sure nothing dropped in the penalty area. And to be fair, they did that from the start. The two centre-halves were very good at that. Andy Cook didn't have a lot to do at the other end, didn't get much service, but he came back and did a lot of, lot of the dirty work from free kicks and corners and throw-ins, and won a lot of headers. And it was, it's one of those where they scrapped a point out of it. And, it may not be a bad point, obviously, if they can follow it up this weekend.
Yeah, and you mentioned there, you alluded to the fact this defensive record that City have got at the moment, and especially away from home, it's quite remarkable, isn't it?
Well, they've had six away games in 2023, and they've only conceded 2 goals, and that was in the one game, obviously, against Stevenage. So they've had 5 clean sheets in 6 on the road this year, which is, I think, I did a piece this afternoon. They've now got eight shutouts away from home this season, which beats last year already. But the fact that the first one wasn't until their 6th away game. So if you look at it that way, they've now played, 17 away games. So that's 8 in 12. And the only teams who scored against them in that time are the current top 3 and Mansfield. So it's it's an impressive record. If you can marry it with a better home record, it should be a recipe for success.
Yeah, absolutely. And they look so nicely poised in the league now to City. I know it's kind of been one of those seasons where it's kind of threatened to get going at points and then it's kind of drifted a little bit. But I mean, you look at the position they're in now, they're in fifth, couple points behind third. It feels like they're kind of peaking at the right time, but I don't want to jinx anything, of course.
Yeah, it's going to be very tough. I think it's going to go right to the wire, regardless, unless they get in a situation where they can't make third and they're sort of sat in a playoff spot and perhaps with a couple of games to go, it's secured. But I mean, other than I think that they're sort of bracing themselves for it to go the distance. And you look at the game. I mean, they've got Carlisle obviously in a couple of weeks' time, which is potentially an absolutely huge game. They've got to play Northampton yet as well, so that those sort of games really sort of stand out for you. But it's all there, isn't it? Them and 6 or 7 other teams. I mean, saying earlier, look at Leyton Orient. Leyton Orient, unless they completely crash, they're going to stroll the way to promotion because they're the one team who haven't had a sort of an embarrassing result against anyone you'd expect them to beat. Obviously City screwed up against Rochdale, who then did Stevenage. It was like,
you're welcome for that one, Simon. You're welcome.
It's weird, isn't it? But you get those. I mean, in Carlisle had that result against Harrogate, didn't he? Everyone has won. Northampton have wobbled a few times. So I think Leyton Orient will probably go over the hill, which, and from City's point of view, they just want Leyton Orient basically to carry on doing that because if they can beat the teams around them, if they can beat the Mansfields or the Stockports or whoever they're playing, then it does everyone else a favour, doesn't it? And it's sort of rather than getting them drifted back into the mix. So I think it looks like a shootout at the moment, doesn't it? And City, as you say, well poised. It's in their own hands now, isn't it? If they blow up, then they've only got themselves to blame, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of other bits of business as well. Mark Hughes nominated for Manager of the Month, Andy Cook Player of the Month. Richly deserved. Yeah,
you can't argue with that. I mean, I don't know whether they'll win it. I think the player might get a Will Collar at Stockport, to be honest. But, the February month they had, I think, there's a few people sort of twitching a little bit. Obviously, they'd had a few draws and that miserable sort of December. But again, a lot of that was down to not playing. No momentum at all was there in matches. And now they are playing regularly. You can accumulate points quickly, can't you? And that seems to be what they are doing at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Newport County next. It presents a good opportunity to get 3 points again, doesn't it, really? It's an away. I think it's away, isn't it, as well?
Yeah,
so, you would fancy City for that, really, wouldn't you?
Well, you would do it. It's classic sort of stodgy League Two, isn't it, Newport away? It's a hell of a journey. It's a hell of a pitch. And, and what they're going to be like. It's very direct. They'll lump it forward. And it's sort of, it won't be an afternoon for the purists, but it's one of those where you'll be disappointed with anything other than 3 points, wouldn't you? And they need it, don't they? Because they win that. It's been a great couple of weeks, and it sets them up very nicely for a spare week before they play Hartlepool at home the following weekend. So it's an important game, as you say. Another sort of 450 odd miles on the road. They've done a few of them lately, but with the away form being as strong as it is, that won't sort of phase anybody at all. And just a case of win those headers again and hopefully nick something.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's nice as well that when a season's going somewhere and there's the prospect that they might get automatic promotion or into the playoffs rather than just being another season that kind of drifts to a close. It must make those long journeys a little bit more tolerable.
Well, it's go back to 2017 was the last time basically you got this stage of the season and there's something to fight for. You could argue 2 years later there was something to fight for, but at that point they were losing to everybody and slipping out of League One with a whimper. But I mean, in terms of upward mobility, there's been nothing, is there? So it is nice because normally you're at this stage, you're ticking them off, thinking, well, might finish top half, which is not really a great incentive for when you're traipsing down a Newport, is it? So it's quite nice that every game matters now. There's big stakes, and that's all you want.
I love there's clubs that would bite your hand off for the top half right now.
Well, you're not out of it yet, are you? I mean, you sort of look at the teams down there. I mean, Crawley are absolutely clueless. I think the natural justice of football is getting rid of Crawley, hopefully. And Hartlepool don't look any great shakes, but they're just sort of doing enough to stay ahead of Crawley, aren't they? So, if the Rochdale charge comes on, it could still happen.
Fingers crossed, though.
not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but looking at Huddersfield Town and City's position, it could be a West Yorkshire derby next year. What do you think of facing the old enemy, the Terriers, again potentially next year?
That'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? A proper derby would be fantastic. I mean, all disrespect to a lot of these League Two sides who come along and bring 150 people and park the bus, and it's like a grim afternoon. It's sort of Groundhog Day. Wouldn't it be great to have a local derby again? You can look forward to it all week. Lots of build up to it. Real edge, needle in the air, and a proper game that matters. But League One's full of them, isn't it? Potentially, you look at the sides at the top there. Obviously, only three of those go up, and there's some big sides vying in that promotion race, so they're going to be around. And the likes of potentially Huddersfield coming down. It's such an incentive to try and get out of this league and get back to the third tier where they should be at least. And then you're not the big fish that everyone sort of rocks up and thinks what a great day out this is and play out their skin. You're another decent sized team in a big division, and that's what they want to be again.
Yeah, just where do you pitch City generally then? Because 20,000 crowd, phenomenal for League Two. What division do you think City should be rocking up in? Really, is it League One? Is it Championship level?
Ultimately, I think they should be aiming for the Championship. You sort of dream of going back to the Premier League, but it's such a different world now these days, isn't it? Even from when City were in it 2 decades ago, it's moved on so much. The gaps are so big now. But they should certainly be aiming. Well, the initial aim was to get back in League One, and then look to be in that sort of top group of League One, pushing to get in the Championship. And then it's all about perhaps establishing yourself there, because again, that's a massive jump in it from third tier to second. But step one is just to get out of this godforsaken league, and because they've been in it far too long. It's sort of like you're living in a bedsit, and you sort of moved into a better house for a few years, and now you're back in that bedsit again, and you just want to get out. The neighbours are doing your head in. So.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, amen to that. Hopefully they can make it a reality. Well, Simon, thank you very much for joining us, mate. Hope the trip's not too bad at the weekend.
I can't wait. Cheers, fellas. Thanks.
Cheers, Simon. Thank you.
Bye-bye. There we go. That was Simon Packer from the Bradford Telegraph and Argus. Remember, if you're watching the video, please smash us a like on the video. Also, get your comments in about our teams across the region as well. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Bradford City, I think it's nicely poised from Chris. I think they're 2 points away from third.
They're only 3 points from second.
Yeah.
They're only 3 points to second. And I think, as you say, they've got themselves in a really good position. If they can back up the 4 points in these last 2 games with a win at Newport and then hopefully a massive win against Hartlepool in that game after, it sets them up for the meeting with Carlisle in 3 games time, I think it is, 3 or 4 games time. And that could be huge. It's at Valley Parade, but Carlisle are a side that will come out and attack. So, as we saw with the Salford home game earlier in the season, that was a 3-2 thriller. You would expect the game against Carlisle to kind of take that suit, because Carlisle are going to be a side that will come and attack and not going to just sit back and defend like a lot of the lower sides in the league do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny when we're talking about kind of where Bradford City should be rocking up every year. I remember it clear as day, them being in the Premier League. I know they're not traditionally a Premier League team. I think it was like 2 seasons in it, but I remember it vividly.
You're that bit older than me, aren't you?
I am just a little bit,
so,
yeah.
I don't remember that.
You extra year. Do you not? Oh, come on, don't do that to me. But yeah, no, I remember it really well, and it was an exciting time for the club. They had Paul Jewell there, and it was good. They looked like they were going somewhere, but obviously financial meltdown and bought the wrong players, and it's same old story. And then they've tumbled down the divisions after that.
The thing is, you look at some of the sides that have been in the Premier League in the years that I do remember more vividly. You look back to like when Blackpool got there for that season.
Oh, God, yeah.
Again, with all due respect, but Bournemouth and their crowds of less than 11,000 in the Prem, and they've kind of been in and around it now for 4 or 5 years or so, maybe a little bit more when you think to Eddie Howe first took them up. It's a little bit mad when you think of that, when you look at some of the sides that just aren't at that level. Not even just Bradford, but League One, as was mentioned. In fact, you got Derby, Ipswich, who've been obviously top flight sides, Sheffield Wednesday, and Charlton Athletic, and some big clubs there from kind of our childhoods and teenage years, really. But yeah, it will be great to see Bradford backers, because I remember them primarily as a Championship side growing up. To be fair, sort of around the early 2000s, of being a reasonably mid-table kind of Championship side. So yeah, it'd be great to see the Bantams back there, and you never know, a couple of years from now, there could be that Yorkshire derby in the Championship with Leeds v Bradford.
Oh, give over. Don't do it to me. We'll be talking about Leeds soon. I don't want to get on to them. I don't want to get angry too early in the show. Do you know what I mean?
You thought I was going to say the Prem then, didn't you? You did.
I did. I thought you'd just drop it in there, but no chance. Yeah, we got Tom Carnduff coming to chat to us about all things Leeds United. It'll be interesting actually to get his take on some of the Premier League action as well. I mean, Liverpool, Manchester United, Chris. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I mean, admittedly, I didn't catch the first half, and then I stuck it on for the second half, and it was just one goal after another. And it did cheer me up after a difficult weekend watching Leeds, actually.
I didn't see it. As daft as it sounds, I didn't actually see it live. I was in Leeds, and we were walking past the pub, and it was literally, I think, just as the seventh goal went in, and for some reason, thankfully, this pub we were walking past had a TV in the window, so I could literally just stand outside and watch the replay of the seventh goal, but like 7-0, like, you know when you kind of do a double take at something. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Could not believe it. But what a remarkable result. What an absolute buster for fantasy football, and for, I imagine, many people's bets as well. Nobody had that coming, I imagine. But yeah, what a remarkable performance from Liverpool. And I still can't quite decide whether it was that Liverpool were phenomenal or that United were just bloody awful.
Yeah, I mean, from what
just a bit of both.
Yeah, and I think Man United's heads just went.
They
completely went. Bruno Fernandes, obviously, been a lot of comment about him since the weekend, and kind of how his head was gone and showed no leadership, and yeah, they just. I think it was a combination of both. I think you kind of got a little preview as to the new Liverpool attack, Gakpo, Nunes, scoring, and you thought, that looks promising. When that clicks in, that could really be potent, and they might even be able to replicate kind of the Mane, Firmino, Salah thing going on as well, because you've still got Jota coming in, you've still got Luis there as well. We forgot about him as well. So, yeah, I still kind of fancy Liverpool to get fourth place, I think.
The thing for Liverpool, and it has been for, almost since that title-winning season, really, it's just the centre of midfield that just needs refreshing somehow. And then, you look at, obviously, Dortmund going out last night, and obviously Bellingham going out with them, and there's been so much talk for a long time about Jude Bellingham and Liverpool. And you think, if they could bring in like Bellingham and Declan Rice into that midfield three with the options they've got for the wide areas and through the middle, it could be, all this talk about a little bit of a crisis at Liverpool over the last 12, 18 months could be all forgotten.
Yeah, I think that would be phenomenal if they could go out and get that done, because we know Declan Rice is leaving. 100% he's leaving. I think they're already sounding out, and he came through at Chelsea, didn't he? So I don't think he'll fancy going back there. Arsenal, big talk connecting him with Arsenal, but yeah, if Liverpool made moves for him and Bellingham, that would be you'd fancy them to get back on top there, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
We're going to be chatting with Tom Carnduff very shortly about all things Leeds United. It's not been a good run for the Whites, as I know all too well. It's been a while since. Well, we beat Southampton, but apart from that, we've not really scored many goals lately. We're bottom of the form table for the last 6 games at really the worst time of year as well, just as you're kind of getting towards that last couple of months as well. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle lately, Chris, watching Leeds.
Yeah, Javi Gracia perhaps hasn't had the bounce that you thought he might have had. Obviously,
it lasted one game.
Yeah, the Saints game. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure bounces are usually meant to last a bit longer than this, mate. But literally one game, and then no goals since.
No, well, I'm going to be interested to see what Tom says about it, because anytime I've been feeling negative about Leeds, Tom has always reassured me. He's always got making salient points. You think, oh yeah, things aren't too bad. There's a lot of promise. But now I'm going to be interested to see what he's saying, because it's getting to that critical zone now. We're not in Huddersfield Town land. We're not that bad. We're not that far gone, or Park Avenue land. But we're circling the drain a little bit.
Yeah, it's gonna. I think it's just the fact that other sides as well. Like, yes, you beat Saints, but then Saints went at Chelsea. And, nobody really saw that coming despite Chelsea's dodgy home form. Forest are kind of pulling out enough results to move them away from the bottom three. Everton are kind of picking up results to move them away from the bottom three. I mean, I don't want to sound too negative, but it's basically just you and Bournemouth that are doing particularly poorly, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, let's see what Tom has to say.
Absolutely, and we'll get him on the show now. Spotting Lights, Tom Carnduff. Tom, thank you so much for joining us, mate.
No problems. Hi, guys.
So we didn't speak last week. I don't think it was the week before. Javi Gracia came in and we beat Southampton, and you thought, hang on, we could be turning things around. There's so many problems as normal with Leeds. We can't score. First of all, we'll start with the Chelsea game. Tom, what did you make of it?
Yeah, it's probably a frustrating one, to be honest. I suppose it's weird to see Leeds just looking like what is relatively a normal team. Everything that they're doing, it's all relatively normal. And obviously when you approach games like that, and regardless of Chelsea's troubles, frankly, you're always going to view them as a kind of a Champions League top four type club away from home. And I think they tried to approach the game in that way to, anything would have been seen as a bonus, if we're being brutally honest. I think ultimately, though, when Illan Meslier is probably having your best chance of the game in terms of scoring, then that probably indicates the way that you're going. So I think that, anything there would have been a bonus regardless of Chelsea's struggles. So for it only to be 1-0 and Leeds to kind of, there was some chances there. There was some good passage of play. There was some good positivity to take from it. So a point would have been a bonus. But I think, for where Leeds are and the kind of the opposition they're playing, it was fine. It was fine. I don't think that it's kind of one of those games to get too worked up about.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am worked up about it. I can't stop myself. But it's frustrating because most of the season our problem was defensively and how kind of porous we were and conceded so many big chances. And now we've tightened up at the back. We look much better at the back. But now in the final third, I mean, I thought we played kind of well in spells against Chelsea. I thought the way we built the ball up into that final third sometimes was really, really good. But the final third, I mean, it is dire. I mean, it's just the wrong decision every single time.
Yeah, I know he spoke about it before, hasn't he? That you can kind of coach that in to players, which is what he believes, which would be interesting. There's kind of, Graham Potter probably knows more than anyone else what it's like to coach a team who just can't take the chances, because that was Brighton for about 2 years before he left. It is that, I think, though, it's that realism of that Leeds are in the relegation battle, and ultimately you've got to tighten up and you've got to get games tight, and you can't just expect to try and outscore everyone. There's got to be an element of being sensible about it. And ultimately, if it is that final wrong decision, as it kind of was, and the final ball, the final pass, the shooting decisions when not to shoot, wrong decisions made there, that is something that can be improved. I think that if it was the other way around, as it has been before, if you couldn't score and you were, or you could score, but equally you're looking like you're going to concede 4 or 5 a game, then that's more of a concern, because you're not going to always score 3 or 4. But if you're still creating or allowing the quality of chances against you, then ultimately, as has been the case in the past, it's going to catch up with you. So I think for kind of the relegation battle and looking around and watching the teams around Leeds as well, that there's teams there that just look hopeless. Like there's kind of not that little bit where Leeds are now, is that they're what I'd say a normal team now. There's no all-out chaos about them. It's very organised, very structured. The Southampton game, the substitutes were normal. I think that's just the word to use. It was just normal. Everything about it was normal. And the only thing is probably that one element up front that's just not quite there at the moment. And if you compare it to the likes of Bournemouth, Southampton, Leicester recently, Crystal Palace are a team that are going to get dragged into it, looking at their fixture run and the way they're performing. There's just an all-round kind of level of performance that's not there. So I think that kind of works in Leeds' favour at the moment. And ultimately, we're only a few weeks in to Gracia being there as well. I know it's kind of the situation where Leeds are. Ultimately, he's only been there for a few weeks now. So with an international break to come as well. I know there's some key games before it, but it's all about setting it up and kind of getting stuff into place. And they're still in that process at the moment. So I think at this stage, not too worried. They've got a win in a game they had to win. There was a performance at Fulham that deserved more in the FA Cup, and they could have progressed in that game. And then at Chelsea, they've done okay in patches in a game that you probably wouldn't win anyway. So in that kind of short spell, I think it's all right at the moment. You've just got to kind of see what happens in the next few weeks.
Do you think that you stumbled across a really good point there? Do you think they're kind of stuck between two styles a little bit at the moment, and they're still trying to iron some of that kind of frantic decision making and that frantic forward playing? Do you think hopefully when Gracia has a little bit more time, like you say, international break, can iron that out of it as well? Because defensively it looks markedly improved, but you still see those moments of frantic, stuff that we saw under Marsh, don't we?
Yeah, Marsh spoke about it last year when he took over from Bielsa, that the players weren't fully adjusting to the way that they now play. And it's natural that if you're playing one system and playing it constantly, and as Leeds were under Marsh, it was pretty much the one way to play. And if you're so driven in the one way that you want to play, as Marsh saw when he took over from Bielsa, the players are naturally always going to go back to that. And especially at points where kind of, I don't know, the nerves kick in, or there are times in the game where it's getting tight, it's getting somewhat scrappy, and you kind of just fall back into what you feel comfortable doing, which probably at the moment is the old way of playing until they've fully kind of got it drilled out of them. And particularly with Gracia, and I think for the first time in years, we're going to see Leeds have that adaptability to the way that they play, and there's going to be a bit more flexibility about them. Naturally, it's going to go when it gets to it. So, Marsh spoke about it before. It's the same problems he kind of had in the short term. It's just natural. It's going to happen to every team. The amount of teams you see that change managers, and then it does take a few weeks to really integrate into the way that you want to go. It's just something that they'll deal with. And I suppose in a way, at least there are enough games to almost, as much as you want to win, you've got some games there against good level opposition that you can kind of test it against almost. You look at Fulham away, Chelsea away, Brighton at home to come. Being brutally honest, you wouldn't expect anything from there anyway. So if they're kind of games where there are signs there that they are fully buying into the way that they want to do it, then that's not necessarily a negative, as important, of course, as points are at the moment.
What about Jack Harrison? What do you make of the form he's in? And I mean, the performance against Chelsea was, well, not good to say at least. But I mean, what do you make of where he's in the team, and does he need a rest?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I know we spoke before, particularly among that interest from Leicester, wasn't it? And Jack Harrison, do you keep him around? And I think the consensus from a lot of people was you would keep him around because he's a very good squad player. He's very rarely injured. He's someone who is reliable in terms of availability and kind of what you want from him. It has been tricky. I think, it's tough last season that everyone suffered, didn't they, in terms of the performance? And I think post Bielsa as well, it's quite not hit those same heights as we saw from him. And I think it's an area of the pitch as well that the cliched you can't hide away from, because in an attacking sense, you're always going to be heavily involved in some way. It probably is just taking him out of the firing line almost. There are options there. I suppose when the injuries kick in, there is the reliability, isn't there, for him to constantly play. But it's a concern. It is a concern. But equally, if everyone was playing well, Leeds wouldn't be in this situation. It's naturally going to happen for certain players, aren't there? And Harrison, the style of player that he is, that I think it's when it's not going right, it's particularly more noticeable when he's so lively. He likes to get on the ball. He likes to run at players. And when it's not working, that's where it's more noticeable, rather than, say, a midfielder who misplaces a few passes, kind of gets disguised in their all-round game. So it probably is just taking him out that firing line, as you say, for a little bit. There are other options there. If Leeds go for that flexibility approach, as we sort of expect in terms of lineup under Gracia, I should say, then maybe that'll help him as well. But it is a concern. It is a concern, but he's shown his quality before. What happens in the summer, it remains to be seen. But at points in the running, he is going to provide very useful, and I think that decision to keep hold of him probably will be justified. It is just ensuring that there's not an over-reliance on any individual player, to be brutally honest, at this point, because everyone needs to contribute.
Where's your head at with how the season's panning out? Because I've got to admit, although it's Chelsea and they spent all this money, etc., I think I was probably more downbeat after the weekend's result than I have been all season because it just kind of dawned on me. I've been thinking previously this wonderful attack and all these attacking options we've got, we're going to score our way out of trouble, or it's changed under Gracia. And then I saw it against Chelsea. I just thought we just don't seem to have that thing in us. I mean, what do you think for the rest of the season? I mean, are you confident we're going to get out of this? Or, I mean, I know we're not in the relegation zone at the moment, but we are bottom of the form table for the last 6 games.
Yeah, I don't think Leeds will ever get out of it this season. To be honest, they're going to be right in to the end because of the nature of the way the league's panning out. But I mean, you see it on Twitter, and when the relegation teams are playing each other and stuff like that, and it's, oh my God, such and such teams winning, this is a disaster. Well, actually, the way the league's panning out, everyone's getting dragged into it. And I think when you're in that relegation picture, the more teams that are involved, the better. Because you don't want to have, say the league panned out that Bournemouth were bottom, Southampton or whoever were above, and then it's maybe between Leeds and Everton for that final spot. As it was last year, you're looking at what one other team is doing. And then you're kind of having to then battle with that one team. And when they win, the pressure's on you. I feel that when you've got probably, I'd include up to Palace. I think Palace are well involved in this at the moment and the way they're going. That's a lot of teams. Then it truly is a case of you can focus on yourself. You don't really have to worry what other teams are doing, because if you win a couple of games and you look at Leeds have got Forest at home and then Palace at home coming shortly, that's probably a defining period. That is 6 crucial points that could well keep you up if you win both. Then you don't really have to worry, because if you're going to win 2 or 3 games or put together an unbeaten run of 3 games, whether it be 1 win and 2 draws, you are going to probably overtake 2 teams, let alone 1. So at the moment, it's not too much panic. I think there's a lot of teams involved, which is a lot better, I think, than having, say, this team and this team, as I say, and you're battling one. The picture's obviously not pretty when you're sat down there, but trust me, Leeds aren't the only ones that are feeling like it. The amount of fans you see from other clubs that think the exact same thing. I mean, I follow loads of Everton fans and follow like Leicester fans, and it's literally the same every week. Everyone's saying the same things. 6 teams can't go down, 7 teams can't go down. But I think when you're focused on one team, think, oh my God, we're terrible. Half the league isn't that great. Like, that's the brutal honesty of the Premier League.
The fact that there's only 6 points between bottom and Palace, I hadn't quite realised that it is as tight as it is, actually. But the fact that, Saints have been picking up unlikely results here and there, and, Everton have picked up points and Forest has, perhaps makes it, as you say, it keeps sides in it rather than anyone being adrift at this stage.
Yeah, I think you kind of, even if it means, Bournemouth and Southampton have to get a win to make that happen, I think in the long run, that's probably better just to keep everyone in check. And, Wolves are showing it. Obviously, Wolves have had that big managerial change during the World Cup period. I wouldn't consider Wolves in it, regardless of what the points say now. I think they're starting to kick on, but it shows that you string a couple of results together. I mean, they were dead and buried if they hadn't made that managerial change. And if you can string even 3 positive results together, it massively changes the picture. And that's all it is at the moment. You look at the teams who are on 22 points, 23 points, 24 points. 3 wins, you could well be out of it. You could literally be out of it at that point because of the amount of teams involved. And Bournemouth and Southampton are worse than Leeds. Right? Even whatever happens, and even if they stay up and the table says, in terms of pure footballing sides.
Did you think that, though, when Bournemouth were winning 2-0 at Arsenal?
I was puzzled. I mean, to be fair, they've done it before. They clearly are very good at kickoffs because they did it against Fulham last season, I think. So they've clearly got that knack going in the club. But again, it's freak results. It's like Southampton at Chelsea. Chelsea had multiple chances to win. Yeah. Leicester, if Kelechi Iheanacho missed 3 golden chances to score, on another day, he buries all 3 or 2 of them, and the entire picture's different, even with that missed penalty early on. So there's kind of been that fortune there. And I mean, that Forest-Everton game, I know it was high scoring, but in terms of pure quality, it was bad. They're not great teams either. So there are a lot of things like that. There are a lot of teams. It was great fun, don't get me wrong. But in terms of if you're looking going, right, are these teams going to stay up? Probably not. No, watching it. No. I mean, when they play someone better. But yeah, a lot of teams are like it. So many teams are like it at the moment. And at this stage, with still a lot to go, then that's fine. That's fine at the moment.
Do you
Steve, key question. Do you feel better now? Has Tom reassured you enough? Are you calmer than you were 20 minutes ago?
I really, really feel down and out about it this week. I was like, normally I start to get hyped through the week when it's coming up to a weekend game. Normally I'd have been like, oh, we can beat Brighton, we can do it, despite all the evidence. But I'm still, I don't know, I'm still
I mean,
so deflated with it.
Brighton's one game that you look at and think you're not going to win this.
No, definitely, yeah, no, absolutely, no. We'll come to a preview. Tom, are we just missing Rodrigo? Would he just solve our final third problems?
Maybe. I think Rodrigo's the intriguing one because obviously now we've spoke before that Rodrigo was the goal scorer who didn't really fit the Marsh system. It was a bit of a puzzling one. Maybe this will suit him. I don't know. Kind of him and Xavi Grazia's paths have crossed briefly in the past, haven't they? So kind of how that dynamic will work. Maybe it is now. Maybe it is a more of a controlled style of playing, and perhaps he'll come in and kind of suit that. So potentially, I think Rodrigo's now even more intriguing than he was before, which is naturally good. But ultimately, he's the top scorer. Whatever happens, he is the top scorer this season. So you bring him back in, and suddenly things are a lot prettier. And a few weeks away from that now, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks with that international break. That's a big positive for the running because there's still 13 games I think Leeds have got left to play.
Yeah.
It's plenty of time for him to come back in and make an impact. So yeah, he's the intriguing one, I think, in terms of this system and how he'll fit in. And I think he'll probably continue to kind of pick up where he left off, which is obviously good.
I think we just need some more luck as well, don't we? I mean, when you look at how hard it is for us, we'd never get a break, do we, ever, in terms of goals or anything? Because you're looking at it thinking, well, Bamford, he's come back, but now he's injured again. Sinisterra, I mean, Tom, if we'd have had him for just 10 more games this season, what a difference it could have made.
Yeah, I think Sinisterra, I think there might have been potentially some history there when they signed him. I remember when it kind of came in. And you imagine if those problems weren't there, he probably would have cost 15 more million than he did. Yeah. I think probably into that category. So you understand that you take a risk. But Bamford, obviously the big one as well, is just, it feels like coming to that summer, it's probably going to have to be a reevaluation of it. The availability and stuff like that, it's just not there at the moment, which is obviously a massive shame because when Leeds went up that first season, the amount of goals he scored that led to the England call-up, and he's never had the opportunity to really build upon that, which is a massive shame. But you mentioned it there and scoring goals, that the attack's not there. Bamford, Rodrigo, Sinisterra is effectively the main winger who isn't available. That's 3 huge misses, and it could even be as simple as that when it comes to scoring goals. And players are coming back, and that'll be an even bigger boost.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to the next game, it certainly doesn't get any easier. Playing a wonderful Brighton team who just thrashed West Ham 4-0. How do you see that one going, Tom? I mean, I think before I would have thought, well, I'm sure Gracia is going to come up with a tactical master plan for us, but the way things are going at the moment, I've just no confidence. But how do you see it going?
Let's crash it back down to earth. Yeah, probably going to lose it. I mean, Brighton are really good. I suppose, again, it's probably for Leeds following that pattern as it has been in the past 3 games under Gracia, trying to keep it as tight as possible. That's probably the way to go about it because they're just such a good team, Brighton. I mean, just everything about the club and the team is an example for kind of people to follow and other clubs to follow. And Graham Potter left. This is it, the collapse. Oh no, here's an even better version of him that they've kind of plucked out. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to then say, it's going to be anything other than defeat. I think anything like Chelsea, anything more than defeat is a positive, even though you're the home team. It's effectively just keeping it tight because obviously they got that very late, potentially season to find an equalizer, wasn't it, last year? So as long as you're in the game for as long as possible, then I think that's the way to approach it. And given what we've seen against Southampton, against Fulham, against Chelsea, I think that'll probably be the aim of this one, to try and just keep it as a low event as possible because Brighton are a better team. Brighton are a better team at the moment, and you've got to play your part. You can't keep thinking that you can go toe to toe with everyone. I think that's probably what Graz is bringing now, a bit of almost sensibility to it. Look, we can't go toe to toe with them as a football team. They're better than us. We clearly all can see that. Let's try and keep it low event, stay in the game for as long as possible, and then, see what happens from there. But yeah, even at home, a point is a huge bonus there because, as you said, they've torn apart a poor West Ham team who, again, we haven't spoke about in the relegation picture, but they're well in it. Even if they somehow win the Europa Conference League, which could actually happen, it shows what quality they are. So a point, that's a huge positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving away from Leeds, then just casting an eye across the Premier League, and got to bring it up, the remarkable result at Anfield: Liverpool 7, Manchester United 0, which certainly helped my weekend some. I mean, where do you even start with that, Tom? I mean, what an incredible result!
Oh, it's just a freak result, isn't it? I mean, I think there was probably some arrogance creeping in a little bit at the Man United camp. You feel like, obviously, and rightly so in a way, stuff's going well. They're doing all right. They've won a trophy. Apparently, they were talking about the title, weren't they, before the game to each other, which has since come out. It kind of sends you crashing back down, and maybe it is that little refresher needed. Just beware of the freak result. I mean, Argentina at the World Cup are the big one. They lost to Saudi Arabia in the first game and went on and won the thing. It's not a defining result for either side, for Liverpool or Manchester United. But I mean, if you're a Liverpool fan, it's just like a dream, isn't it? It's like, this is who cares what happens for the rest of the season now? We beat Man United 7-0. So the reality check for Man United, and I think they've got Southampton at home this weekend. So like the perfect bounce back game is now. I know they've got Real Betis in the Europa League to come as well, but it's like the perfect bounce back game for them. But I just couldn't believe it because the way Liverpool are going, nothing pointed to even like that happening. I thought Liverpool might win, but there's literally no indication of it. Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. And I don't think one that we won't see it for a very long time between those two if it ever kind of comes to it again.
What do you make of Liverpool's potential new front line? It was kind of a glimpse into the future, wasn't it? With a Gakpo who was firing, Nunes scoring. You've still got Jota and Luis Diaz as well. I mean, it's could be an exciting future for Liverpool, couldn't it? They could get that, next team, couldn't they? That next great team for them.
Yeah, and I suppose that front three was the big one. I think particularly since Sadio Mane left, it had never been the same, had it? And obviously Roberto Firmino's on his way out in the summer, so that is truly the kind of indication that this is changing. So that was probably the first time we saw that front line really come to life. And Gakpo particularly, I think, probably needed that. I know he scored quite recently, didn't he? It took him some time to settle in, but he truly looks like he has settled in. And Salah, who has kind of been a bit of a narrative that he's had a bad season because Erling Haaland's, the new brilliant striker that we all love. And yet Salah's now on 21, is it, in all competitions? So he's been quietly
bad season, that.
Yeah, and it's because the majority, I mean, he scored in all but one Champions League game, I think. So because not many, I think only like 10 of them now, is it, or whatever, have come in the Premier League, we kind of didn't realise what good of a season he was having. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. You mentioned there that Jota, who is such a good goal scorer, truly how much he fits. I know it's one to say, but truly how much he does fit into that from an off the ball perspective and things like that. He still scores loads of goals for him. So for him to come back is a massive bonus. And Luis Diaz as well, who I think has been brilliant.
Forgotten man, isn't he?
Again, you just forget that he's there because he's been out for so long. And, he's been absolutely superb since signing. So, yeah, to have that kind of, I don't know who would be the starters, Darwin Núñez is clearly a project player they're going to go with. Salah's obviously undroppable, and who then takes that central role, or if they shift it round and Núñez goes central, Gakpo goes out to the left. It's interesting. But yeah, we'll see if they're back. We'll see if they're back. They've been very good at home all season anyway, even with that Real Madrid result. But
the key's going to be for them. The key's going to be refreshing that central midfield area. I think we've spoken about it a few times, isn't it? And, you look at them, think linked with Bellingham, of course, and that's been going on obviously with them, with Dortmund going out with Champions League last night as well. It kind of adds a little bit fuel to the fire on there. And also Declan Rice I've seen linked as well of late. I don't know if they brought both of them in. Good God.
Yeah, they've got that's, I know we've said it before, that is the one, isn't it, for Liverpool, that how the future success depends on how that midfield rebuild in the summer goes, because the entire department needs a rebuild. This isn't just let's chuck Bellingham in and then they'll fix it. All three of them really need replacing in the central positions, and then perhaps you look more to like a partner for Van Dijk, because Joel Matip's been off it. Canate, can't really be the sole one to kind of lift that partnership between them. So yeah, that is probably how their future success comes down to, and how well that rebuild goes, because they really need to nail it. And if they do, then they are well back into that title race next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Arsenal, are they actually going to win this thing?
Yes. Let's just
Wow.
accept it. I mean, everyone kind of talks about the defining moment of Reece Nelson and that goal. I think for me, they're probably, I know it's hard to say because they've been leading all the way through, but the point that really made me think, yeah, they are going to win the title, was that Aston Villa game where it just looked like it's not happening and it's not working. And I think at 2:00, we're thinking, oh, they're blowing this. That's it. City will beat Forest in the 3:00 game. Then suddenly it flipped over. They'll never catch them up again. And then suddenly to come out of it winning by 2 goals, albeit that daft empty net one at the end. That for me thought, right, that is their defining moment. And then to have the Bournemouth game shortly after just reinforces it. Everything is going their way. Everything is going their way at the moment. And City just don't strike as much fear into you, because you think they'll only beat you 5-0 rather than 8-0 now. So I think that's probably a positive thing. But just got to accept it for Arsenal now. It's going to happen.
Quick one with City, obviously, with the Leeds United thing. Calvin Phillips, I mean, bizarre season for him, isn't it? I know
what a waste of money.
Well, I know it's the typical kind of slow first season at Man City thing, but I just feel like it. I mean, I think he played a game. I think it might have been the FA Cup, and I searched his name on Twitter, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to, I don't want to see people say that about Calvin Phillips. Obviously, I still love him from his time at Leeds, but it's just not happened for him, has it? It seems to be symptomatic of this kind of, I don't know, this strange season for City somehow.
Yeah, he was never going to get in anyway, was he, with Rodri there? He was always going to be the backup. The assumption was that City plays so many games that he'll get his fair share of them. I think it's also that there's probably a remoulding of him as a player, that Rodri is one of the best defensive-minded midfielders in the world, but because of City's dominance has a constant kind of reliance to contribute in attack. I mean, he posts a couple of shots pretty much every game for City, which Calvin Phillips wasn't doing that at Leeds. He was very much the base of the midfield. He does the defensive stuff. He sprays the ball around. But in terms of consistently driving forward and joining in, that's kind of not what he does. And we saw it in that FA Cup game. I think Calvin's slightly starting to get there now. So it's obviously probably been a bit of a longer term thing than they would have expected. But when you think Declan Rice, who I think when you compare the two is a better kind of option for a top team than Calvin Phillips, but not often you're going to get a player of his age who's an England international, who was probably the best player at the Euros for, what was it, 45 million or whatever the final price was. Not often that chance is going to come up, and you probably have to accept at that point. We're going to have to mould him somewhat. It may take a year. Look at Jack Grealish. It may take a bit of time to get him in there, but he was never going to be a starter. But I think, he's starting to just get there a little bit. I think next season he'll probably be in a position where we'd see him start every cup game, play in the Champions League, and, supplement Rodri when they're around the big games and other tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. Who do you fancy for the top 4 then? So we've got City, Arsenal. Next up, I mean, I kind of fancy Liverpool to get it now, I think.
Yeah. Arsenal, I think Man United will obviously be there. I don't know, because Tottenham, I mean, we'll see how they do tonight in the Champions League. But again, it's just that even during that kind of winning recent run they've had, they never fill you with confidence that it's going to go well. It's been that case for a year, and I think, or years, I should say. And it seems that Conte is going to go in the summer. I think he was happy to go. I think Tottenham will be happy to go. And whether they just slowly meander to the end of the season, and if Liverpool can catch them. I mean, one of Brentford, Brighton and Fulham is going to play in Europe next season, and I would love it to be that one of those. So yeah, not sure who.
Tom, Chelsea, is it, plain sailing ahead now after the last couple of results? Of course, Leeds did some favour by not turning up at Stamford Bridge, and yeah, what a win for them last night in the Champions League.
Yeah, they played well in the Champions League as well. That for me was kind of the key. I think Dortmund obviously had opportunities to score, but it looked like a Graham Potter Brighton team where there was dominance to them. They looked quite comfortable. Yeah, again, we'll see. You don't want to get carried away on the back of two results that, frankly, you'd go they should win. Leeds at home, Dortmund, who might win the Bundesliga for once at last, for the first time in the last 100-odd years, or however long Bayern have won it. So we'll kind of see. But, I mean, the quality's always there. Potter was never a bad coach overnight, was he? So,
No.
Yeah, for me, they'd be daft. I mean, it's good for them. I suppose everyone else was hoping they lost it. So Chelsea would go, this is ridiculous, get rid of him. And it'd be a terrible decision to do so. We spoke turning points for Arsenal. Maybe that's the one that Chelsea needed. Chelsea needed moments like that, and they look to have got it. So we'll kind of see what happens. But I think a European run would be incredibly welcome for them at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Elsewhere then, fantasy football. What do we think, guys?
Do we have to?
You were doing better, weren't you? There was you guys were quite close, weren't you? Actually, I seem to recall.
This weekend was an absolute bloody car crash. I'm not going to lie. Awful.
Let's have a look. Let's see how the Route 1 League is going on, because I think there were a bunch of you that were quite closely pitched. Let me have a look, because I've stopped.
Yeah, we were all ahead of you, Steve. To be fair,
you were.
And we still are.
Yeah, I know. I've not. I think I've still got Aronson in my team. I think. Yeah, because where are you now? Oh,
wow,
Tom, you're second.
Got up to second. I've had a good couple of weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been quite good. I think it was the last game week 25, maybe, where I got 127 points. Saka captain, Martinelli, Van Dijk I had, who got 2 clean sheets and a goal. Ben White, a couple of clean sheets I think were in there. He scored, I can't remember. So that basically was my season-defining moment. Forget about Chelsea now.
I'm just having a look. I've just gone back, because you had Saka captained, Martinelli got you 26, Van Dijk 24. Huge. Anything we should be looking out for going forward?
Yeah, I've been looking at. I do a column. There's me plugging my work on sportinglife.com, but I do the weekly column, and in that, actually, this week, the next 3 game weeks are incredibly tricky to navigate. There's the FA Cup quarterfinal next weekend, and there's double game weeks coming up for some teams. Brentford are the one team that you should absolutely be hammering over the next few weeks. So in the next 3 game weeks, teams can play up to 5 times. Brentford play 5 times.
Wow.
And this week is Everton and Southampton. I know they're both away, but they're very winnable. So I think when it comes to trebling up on clubs and players like that, then Brentford for me are absolutely the one to target. If you're comfortable enough with players for next week, Brighton or another, who are on 2 double game weeks either side of it. And also, I would not be against selling Erling Haaland this week and bringing him back in a couple of weeks.
I've seen 1 or 2 things. I got a notification, I think, from the Premier League app, and the shock headline was, "Is it time to sell Haaland?" Like, no, it isn't. But maybe it is.
Well, you look at that. So, of the potential 5 games across the next 3 game weeks, City play twice. 1 of those is against Liverpool. So, I mean, depending how you want to do it, and I mean, the guy's a freak. He could easily score 3 goals this weekend, but he's not been scoring a huge amount of points, not as he was at the start of the season. Like, you could probably look at it and say, okay, if I can go from Haaland to like Tony or Mbuemo or someone like that.
I was about to say, is Ivan Toney the way forward? Because in particular, as you say, that double game week where they've got Forest and Everton, that's 2 sides where Tony can score, and of course he's on penalties. Knowing my luck, of course, I'll make that change, and then the FA will suspend him there and then for the betting allegations.
I mean, that is kind of the hanging over thing, isn't it? And when they want that to come in, and I think they might want it sooner than later, so it eats into the off season. I mean, Brian Mbuemo is a good one. He's always a presence. He's been in great form. Matthias Jensen, Ethan Pinnock scored from a defensive perspective, didn't he? So, yeah, I wouldn't be afraid of getting rid of Haaland and looking at game week 26, about game week 29, is it? And looking at bringing him back in then, or game week 30 around that time, bringing him back in then. but I would not be afraid at all to drop him at the moment, just on fixtures alone, and then really targeting those teams who are obviously playing 4 or 5 times, because it's a huge ask for Haaland to, as good as he is, to are we saying that Tony or Mbuemo or someone they score more than Haaland in 5 games to
Then
Haaland's
Haaland
2?
is in 2, yeah.
And one of those is an incredibly tricky game against Liverpool, and we know what those games are like. Even though they're typically high scoring, can be tetchy at times.
Very
Will
nip
they
and
just
tuck.
completely close him out of the game? So, it depends where you are in leagues as well. If you've got some making up to do, then why not? Everyone owns Haaland. It might be a bold strategy that pays off. And I mean, if there was ever a time to do it, it's now, based on that run of fixtures and who's playing when, because the fixture list isn't great to City over the next 3.
Good stuff. Well, Tom, thank you very much for joining us again. Pleasure as always, and we'll speak to you next week.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot,
Take care.
Tom.
Bye.
Thank you.
There we go. That was Sporting Life's Tom Carnduff chatting to us about all things Leeds United. Please, if you're watching, smash a like on the video, give us a subscribe to the channel. Got plenty of content all about our teams across West Yorkshire. A team we've not mentioned, actually, Chris, is Halifax Town. We will be chatting to Tom Scargill. I know I said Carnduff again there. Tom Scargill will be chatting to tomorrow from the Halifax Courier, all about Halifax Town. Their season was going downhill, but they got that remarkable 5-0 win against Wealdstone, followed up by a couple of 0-0 draws. So it's still a bit hit and miss, isn't it, for the Sherman at the moment?
Yeah, well, we looked at, I think it was it Boreham Wood at home, followed by Wealdstone. And we looked at that at a time and thought, well, if they lose both of those games, there's a strong chance that Millington, the pressure might just be too much and they may get rid because of the run they'd been on previously as well. Was it like 1 win 12 before that, something? But obviously they got that resounding win there against Wealdstone, battered it with a couple of points. I mean, last night against Gateshead, one of the sides in and around them. I suppose it's better to get the point, obviously, it would be to lose those games. So, yeah, things are looking a little bit better there, but it's just been going to be one of those seasons that likelihood for Halifax, it's just going to kind of peter out to nothing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Lovely. So we're going to take a short break now for the next 10 minutes or so. We'll be back on a little bit later, and we're going to be chatting to Steve Downs from the Huddersfield Hub, all about everything Huddersfield Town. It should be good stuff. We'll be back a little bit later on. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to the West Yorkshire Football Show. I'm Steven Browne and with me is Chris Bell. We're back from our little refreshing break and we're ready to chat all things Huddersfield Town. Chris, before we get Steve on Huddersfield Town, we've already spoken about what a difficult season it is for them so far. Do you think what do you think they're thinking about Warnock now? I can't wait to chat to Steve about this because he was meant to be the saviour.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be the saviour. I really did. And it's just not come to fruition as yet, has it? Apart from obviously that first game. And you thought, excellent, just carry this on and they'll be fine. It's just not quite happened. And obviously the Burnley defeat surprised no one. It was one of those. He was either going to pull an absolute rabbit out of a hat or it was going to go the way it did. The Coventry game, I don't think anyone really saw it again. So that being quite the way it was. Birmingham, just a disappointing defeat again. A game where you looked at before, and I think we all went for a 2-1 Huddersfield winning that game prediction-wise. So we really did see them getting something out of that. And then last night, as I say, saw the first half of it. Wasn't a great deal in the game. Wasn't a great deal full stop to be excited about. And obviously finished with the way it started at 0-0. So, yeah, they need to get some points on the board somewhere, but it needs to happen sooner rather than later. And you kind of just thought that they've picked up more points under Warnock already than they have, to be honest.
Yes, indeed. And I'm delighted to say we're going to introduce now onto the show from the Huddersfield Hub. It is Steve Downs. Good evening, Steve. Oh, you were muted. Sorry, mate. Try again.
I know you don't want me to speak much, but yeah, all right. How we doing? What are you on about? Going for promotion? What are you on about? You're looking at league upside down, lad.
I like that's optimistic thinking. I like it.
Yeah, it is. It is really.
Yeah. Steve, we'll rewind. Unfortunately, we've got to do it because we've got to cover all bases. But the Coventry game, I think last week when we spoke, I think you were cautious about it to say anyway. But 4-0 loss again. But that was back-to-back 4-0 defeats. What did you make of it, mate?
Yeah, it was abysmal to be quite honest. First 20 minutes we did all right. Then Heilig makes an absolute just amateurish error, to be quite honest. Tried to guide the ball back to the keeper, got it totally wrong. Lad goes through and chips it over Balokovic. You're thinking, well, it's just our luck, bottom of the league, creating errors like that. That's how things are going to go. And then second half, you're thinking, right, all right, 1-0 down, but that was the same for the Birmingham game. Which we managed to. I just want to correct you to say that we did win the Birmingham game 2-1.
Yeah, I got my Midlands-based sides mixed up there. Apologies.
You did. It's all right. It's a tricky part of the country, that Midlands. But yeah, it's second half. We thought, well, we might turn it round, and then they just go in absolute wipers. To be honest, the defending is. There isn't a word in the English dictionary to describe it, to be honest.
I only saw the highlights, but I even just watching the highlights, I just couldn't.
Did your eyes bleed? Mine did.
It felt like it. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I mean, I couldn't believe it.
The second goal was just amateurish. The third goal, Scott Eye loses his man, and then he's beaten at the near post. And the fourth goal is just wow! It's when you play a pro on FIFA and they just go through and they just pass it across the box for a tap in. It was just I was just sat there in disbelief. I couldn't believe it, and I got quite a little bit of stick for my tweet regarding Scott Eye's performance after that game. And listen, I don't want any young player that plays for Town to not succeed. I'm one of the more ambitious fans for us, and I want every player to go on and be successful at the club. At the end of the day, I'm a fan. Why wouldn't I want them to be? But when you're a professional footballer, and it don't matter to me whether you're 19 or you're 33, you don't make the errors that he was making on a football pitch, and that's why he was out of the side last night for the game against Bristol City, because whether they felt that they needed to take him out the firing line or genuinely they looked back and thought his performance was just not up to scratch, which I definitely didn't think it was, then, they needed to take him out of the picture. I don't like picking on players. I never have gone for that on social media, really, or in my own thoughts, but his performance was not up to the standard of Huddersfield Town Football Club on Saturday afternoon. And I will say that none of the players were, to be quite honest. Coventry City, not flipping Real Madrid, but it felt like it, to be quite honest.
How concerned are you about the number of goals conceded as well? Because I think it was only when Narcis had that game against Stoke, he lost 3-0. That was the first time he's conceded 3 goals. And then obviously you've now conceded 8 on top of that. I mean, I don't want to say there's an argument for Fotheringham staying and keeping the defence tight, but I mean, it really seems to have dropped off since he's left. I mean, is that fair to say?
Well, 2 points on that. Thanks very much for taking that lovely little banner down as well.
Can I just say I'm not in control of banners tonight?
Oh, is it Chris? Oh, I'll come up then. Yeah. Fotheringham back in. That's hashtag Fotheringham.
Yeah.
You watch.
I'll just make that one.
Do it for the bands. Yeah, get it on. No, let's not go back to the Scottish Wonderman. The goals conceded is a big worry. It's not something that you normally see of Warnock's teams. They don't tend to let a lot of goals in, but I don't know what he's supposed to do, because it's not like the young kids, these guys. I mean, Helix played at a decent level for Barnsley last year, was their best player. We got Matty Pearson and Tom Lees that were pretty much outstanding for the majority of the season last season. So I just don't understand where the confidence. It's a mentality thing. I think Warnock's spot on. It's just a mentality thing, and when you make basic errors like they are doing, you're just going to concede goals left, right, and centre. I also believe, obviously, Lee Nichols not being in goal. I know he's not had the season that he had last season, but with him in net, he brings some stability, and that hasn't happened. I think, obviously we've got the young kid Balokovic in, who's done all right and hasn't really done much wrong apart from the odd goal here and there. He hasn't been able to do a lot about it. And then Vaslik, who played very well last night, made some exceptional saves, has been a bit injured. So, it doesn't help when your goalkeeper is having to be switched over time. But Warnock can't really do anything about mistakes on the pitch. I mean, neither could Fotheringham, to be fair. I will give him that. But I don't know how you stop them, because it's simple errors. I mean, us 3 could have been on the pitch against Coventry and played better than our defence, I'll be honest. And I'm not the quickest. By just the looks of it, to be fair.
Moving on to last night then, 0-0 against Bristol City. It's a point in the right direction at least. What did you make of it, Steve?
Apart from being cold, it was great. No, it wasn't. It was a performance where it was a lot better than Coventry. I mean, it couldn't have got much worse. But it felt like a defeat, because I think everybody accepts now that's pretty much it, even though there's 11 games left. And I know Warnock's trying to sort of keep us going with, some sort of mentality.
Rallying cry.
Yeah, let's not just die. But I think the season's already pretty much dead in it. If we're looking at it honestly, I think we had to beat Bristol City to have any chance. It's one of the home games that we had left. We spoke last week about the home form, and so we just, I don't see where because we're not going to pick up any points from West Brom, and we've got Norwich at home, but they're flying and going for the playoffs. So we always said the run of fixtures were going to be difficult, but these last two were where we needed to get some points, and we haven't.
Are you a bit disappointed that Warnock hasn't been able to do a bit more since he came in? Is there any fault with him or any kind of,
what more could he have done?
or...
He ain't got a transfer window, and he said himself he's looked at free agents, but there's none out there that he thinks that will come in and do a job and start straight away for what we need. I don't really see what more he could do. Yeah, I think the tactical sort of job has been difficult for him because we've had certain injuries. Headley had to come off against Coventry, which didn't help the flow of the game to start with, and he didn't have a full-back on, so he chucked Diarra on in wing-back position, which didn't help, and he's just not suited to it. And then, obviously, the errors we've just spoke about. So he's already had to shift his team about in the first 20 minutes of the game. He put Jackson on last night, but that meant obviously then we had less firepower on the bench, and he didn't bring Simpson on for whatever reason. I thought it was worth chucking him on at 70 minutes, but he didn't. Karoma came on, and to be fair to Karoma, did play quite well. Had a superb chance, which really should have stuck away, but that's the thing of our season, isn't it? Letting in goals with amateur defending and not being able to finish off chances. And end of the day, that's why you end up at the bottom of the league and where we're at. So, yes, it's worrying. But to be fair to Warnock, I don't see what else he can do. I'm sure he's trying 100%. And yeah, I was excited for his appointment a couple of weeks ago. But the squad is just, I think it's finished mentally, to be honest. I don't think there's anything left there that the players will try and give what they can, and there was effort last night, but I just think they're mentally finished, and the whole squad just needs an overhaul, and I think players need to move on to give them a fresh start at other clubs, and we just need to have a real proper reset from top to bottom of the football club.
It's funny, isn't it? When you're in that position as well. I've seen it with my own club, Leeds, and when we talked to Lewis covering Bradford Park Avenue, when you're in the mire, and it's strange, isn't it? Because the players, they give everything, but when it's not happening, it's just nothing there, is there? And I feel Leeds are not in as bad a position as Huddersfield are yet, but it feels you just don't see a way out of it, do you? I'm looking at the form guide, and you've got QPR. They're on a terrible run of form, but they are 7 points clear of you. If you could just get, say, back-to-back wins or something, just to bridge that gap, give you a bit of hope, because there's still 11 games left.
Yeah, but I just think I agree with Warnock. I just think they're so mentally soft and weak that any sort of any sort of goal that goes against us, the heads drop so far down that it's just so difficult to get back into any match. And that's the real issue. I don't think it's yes, it's a performance issue, and I wasn't terribly impressed with. I know he said that they put effort in against Coventry, but I think effort would have stopped it being a 4-0 drubbing. Against Burnley, I can take a little bit because the top of the league by 12 points and one of the best championship teams we've ever seen. So I can take that a little bit, but not from Mark Robbins' Coventry City. That's not acceptable. So you look at the fixtures left, and they're all against the top teams, as we well know. Corberan will be wanting to lash us one on Saturday. I'm sure he'll be telling his players, we want to make a mockery of this lot. Wagner will probably be a bit nice, and I'm hoping that he just leaves it at 2-0 and says, "Right, boys, back in now. I don't want to embarrass my old team." But they're all tough fixtures. I'm a bit resigned to relegation now, if I'm honest. I'm sure you can sort of hear it in my voice, in a sense, and that's it is what it is. I'll have to get myself up to go and watch us to play Fleetwood, Colchester, Plymouth, and God knows whoever's at the bottom of League One. Because we've been there before. We've been there before, but it's just a very sad end to the whole last decade and whatever, 13 years, 14 years of, supporting the club, really. It seems like it's the sort of end of a proper era, really. We've had these end of an eras that have happened with Wagner leaving. Obviously, Dean then sold the club to start with, but then came back, and they've been like false end of eras, but this just seems like it's the last of the, proper end of era, and the next one will start, and we'll just see where the club decides to go in the summer. But it needs an overhaul from top to bottom, and you can't just blame one person. A lot of people blame Lee Bromby. Yes, I've been critical of him. He's made massive mistakes. Haven't we all in life? And I'm sure he regrets the ones that he has made, but it's not been totally his fault, as it's not been totally Dean's fault. But you've just got to, say that the football club has been run in a, not a half-hearted way, but it's just not been up to standard to be in this division. And I can't wait to play Lincoln next year.
Well, that's going to be something
smash
special.
out at Imps.
But it's phenomenal, isn't it? When you look at the fact that you got to the playoff final, 12 less than 12 months ago, and you think you're looking at it 12 months later, and it's kind of all, like you say, it feels like an end of an era. But does it going down give the club a chance to reset in terms of getting a direction again, getting a focus? I mean, it just feels like this year it's just been, I don't know, it's just meandered, hasn't it?
Going down, I disagree with all these people that say going down is a good thing. Getting relegated is never a good thing.
No.
But the one thing it does do, it gets the board, give a board the chance to have a proper now sale in the summer. The new owners hopefully will be in by next season. They'll have enough time. God forbid, I hope it's not just August. It'll be just a town thing, though. Won't it be 3 weeks to the beginning of the season? We'll sell club and new owners will come in. We won't be prepared, but that's just a town thing. But I hope, God forbid, that the club will be sold by sort of end of May, June, and then the new owners can be in, and we'll have interestingly, Liam Richardson were there last night, the ex-Wigan boss, and he put a lovely tweet out saying, great game at the John Smith Stadium. I mean, if Liam thought that was a great game, I'm a bit concerned, but, it seems like a lovely bloke anyway, so we'll see whether he becomes our manager in the summer. But yeah, it gives the whole club supporter fan base a chance to reset. I had a couple of conversations with people at last night's game who said that they may not renew their season ticket. That's up to them. I'll still be there. I'll support the club.
What have they done with prices for the season ticket, Steve? Have they announced?
No, they haven't announced anything, and I think that's due to the fact that obviously the ownership situation is currently in a delicate fluctuation state, really. I don't think the club can set a price. Or I think it'd be difficult if the club set a price, right, even if it's a League One price, and they kept the prices the same, and then the new owners came in, they couldn't really change it then, could they? So unless it gets to a desperate point where we get to May and we've still got no new owners, then they might have to say, right, well, whoever we sell the club to, we're just going to have to try and sell some season tickets. But it's at the moment they haven't released any information. Although you can win two free season tickets with one of our sponsors, so I don't know really how that's panned out in terms of pricing and the offer. But that's up to the commercial department of the club. I'm sure they've got a sweet deal on the end of that. So
exactly. Huddersfield Town fans, get in touch. Let us know what you think of the future for Town really coming up. And it's funny. Last time that we did this show, probably 4 4 years ago or something, that was the end of the Premier League journey again. It was Sean Makin, who we used to speak to every week, and it was I did feel bad for Sean because every week he used to come on and it was, like another thrashing. And I was hoping this time, with Huddersfield, it was going to be a bit of a brighter one. I certainly expected it to be after being playoff finalists last year, but I guess it didn't tear the whole picture there.
Yeah, that's the thing. By the way, clip this. Hi, Sean. Hope you're good, pal. Hope you're good. He's a good lad, is Sean. Although sometimes we disagree about Town, but overall, he's a good lad. I have to go for
get him on, Sean. I'm sending you invite over now.
If you want a pint, Sean, let me know. Give us a ring. Yeah, it's just, but that's the thing. It feels like an end of the proper end of an era now, where the club will change. Over the next year, it will look like a totally different club. There will not be the same players here. There won't be probably the same board, management team, coaching staff. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to look like a totally different club, and none of us know what that club's going to look like, and none of us know how the fan base will react to that club. Obviously, we'll all back it till we sort of we're in the ground, but I think it will be interesting to see, because they've got to handle the supporter base right of the new owners. Whoever they are, they've got to have an understanding of what Huddersfield people expect, what they want from their club. They want, honesty and pride and some ambition. And I always love the quote from Ian Greaves. I think it was Ian Greaves, the ex-Town manager, who said that Town fans love champagne football on beer money, which I think is a lovely, oldie worldy quote. So we'll see whether we get champagne football on beer money.
Mark Harrison, thank you very much for your comment, mate. He says there are rumours of the club going into administration. Steve, have you heard any whispers of a similar note?
No, I haven't, to be honest. I can't see that personally happening because of two reasons. It doesn't really make sense for Dean to do that. He wouldn't get his money back. The way that he will get his money back is by selling the club. Although, if the club did go into administration, it wouldn't be like last time, where the club literally won't have a future. It will have a future. It'll just be whether how quick Dean wants to get rid of it. But I don't see Dean wanting to put the club into administration at all, because whatever your thoughts are on Dean Oyle, he still loves the club and will not put it into a situation where it's destruction and nothing. So I'd be very, very shocked if the club goes into administration. The second reason is, although Dean won't do it, it might not be fully his choice. As we well know, Phil Hodgkinson's still the 75% shareholder. So it will be interesting to see what the power of attorney over them shares are. Nobody knows where that situation kind of lies at the minute. And so, whether Dean's got the shares back or how the negotiations are going with any potential new owner and how involved Phil is with that. So, but again, I can't see Phil wanting to do that. Whatever your thoughts are on Phil, he's a supporter, and football needs to end. If two fans are going to put the club into administration, then football might as well end, doesn't it, really? So no, I haven't heard any rumours. Obviously there are rumours, but I can't substantiate anything that I may or may not know.
It's funny you mentioned that about fans being owners. I remember when Leeds were in the Championship, and I think chairman was having to write a cheque for 1 to 2 million a month just to cover costs, and it's just the loss making is just scary, isn't it?
I didn't know Ken Bates were a big Leeds fan. Sorry, Cellino.
A long time ago, he's Ken Bates.
Was it Cellino? Yeah, he would have big Leeds fan
as well. Yeah. Nutters for about a decade. Well, probably
more. What was that other made-up company?
GFH. Yeah, we got a Middle East takeover from a skint bank.
Yeah, what was that name again?
GFH.
Yeah. I mean, they basically set up a company on HMRC, didn't they, for about 2 days?
And bought Leeds. And we thought, here we go, the next Man City.
No, that's it, you see. It's like, I think we should club together and buy sort of like, I don't know, Aston United or something, shouldn't we?
What about Bradford Park Avenue or something?
Well, they're not having a good time. I know a few lads who support the Avenue, and they're not having a good time. We might be playing them soon anyway.
It's not that bad.
The way things are going, if we end up in administration, we will be playing them. So can't wait. I've been to Avenue. I once went to watch a game. I don't know who they were playing, but when I was a kid, and I got that bored that there's that bit behind the ground where you can go play football. So I just did that with my cousin. I think it ended like 2-0 to Avenue at the time. There was about 3 people that cheered the goal or whatever. But I hope that they get back on the feet, and because it's a lovely little community club there, and people are proud to work for Avenue, and it's got a long history. So like Town have, and like Halifax has, and all the other non-league clubs like your Liversidges and Golkers and Emleys and. And that's through football, and that's that's where football should lie, with the community, and that's why it goes back to my point about any new owners. They need to understand what the community is in Huddersfield, and what we think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark again. He said it was Stan Turnant who thought we wanted champagne football on beer money.
I thought it was more modern than that. I thought it went all the way back to the 70s.
It's a good job you're here, Mark. Someone who knows. Whoa!
Are you going to get Mark on in to replace me? Whoa! What's happening here?
I think that's actually Sean Makin in disguise. I think
it is as well.
He wants his old.
Hi, Sean. No. Stan Turnant was also the guy who. The famous Christmas dinner rant that I'll let you go up and read about, but yeah, that was quite famous at the time. He was like, so
a bit of town history. Am I right in thinking Bill Shankly left Huddersfield because he thought they lacked a bit of ambition?
Yeah, so Bill Shankly came to town in the 50s before he went to Liverpool, and he wanted to sign Ian St John and Ron Yates, who he did go on to sign for Liverpool, and in fact they were his first signings at Liverpool. But because the board at Town didn't give him the funds to sign them, the rest is history. Bill left and went to Liverpool, signed them, and they were in the Liverpool team for a long time. They were like the sort of beating out of that early Merseyside sort of scene, and Town, I think, in the 60s we went from the 2nd division right down to we ended up in the 4th division. So my good I've interviewed him in the past, Jeff Hutt, who used to play for Town. He put Harry Redknapp on his backside on the gravel when we played West Ham in the 60s, which is one of his favourite memories, bless him. So yeah.
Yeah, I know it's sliding doors moments, isn't it, to say the least there.
You can read about Bill Shankly's time at Huddersfield Town on Huddersfield Hub if you want. Not that I'm plugging my own website.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it,
Steve. Tell us, how do we get to that then?
You just go to huddersfieldhub.co.uk, and in the search box at the top, just type Bill Shankly in, and the article will come up, and it tells you all about the history of Bill Shankly at Huddersfield Town, really.
Oh, all right. I'll be reading that then, yeah, because I love that era of football. I love kind of like 60s, 70s, and that like kind of budding, because there were a lot of great managers that built clubs up with their bare hands. It seemed, clubs that really had no history of success.
Do you know what Bill Shankly said about Liverpool when he first went there? No, it was the biggest toilet in England. And Anfield was the biggest toilet in Liverpool, apparently. So, that's where his famous quote that he wanted to. I won't do a Scottish accent, but he wanted to turn Liverpool into a bastion of invincibility and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, I love the thing where he. Well, that's we were talking a couple of weeks ago, if you remember, about managers past and Warnock's sort of style. And there's always a thing of Shankly at Liverpool when they won the league or the FA Cup. I think it was the league, and he was all. They were all there, the players, and they were having a great time. And Bill was there in his suit, and he just goes, "These players are proud to play for you, and if they didn't know it, they certainly do now." And all that sort of stuff. And I just love that because he just got that city, and he got there's some stories of when he was at Huddersfield. He'd do a game on a Saturday. And he managed town at the old Leeds Road ground. And after the game, he'd referee a kids' game on the adjacent field that was behind the stadium. Kids would come out of their houses after they're having the tea. And he'd referee, he'd just referee kids' games. And he'd be like, go home. You've done your main job. But he loved it, you see. He couldn't leave it alone. And
how long were you at town for? How long did he actually?
You put me on the spot there. I think 2-3 years. I think 3 years. 56 to 59, I think.
Wow.
And he'd started to build a side that were looking quite tasty. And obviously had Ian Law at town, so obviously not Ian Law, Dennis Law, sorry, the great Dennis Law. So he played Dennis for his first ever game, I think, or it might have been the manager before him, but he then got quickly sacked or left, and then Bill came in, and that's where Dennis started his career. So there's a lot of links between Shankly, Law, and all that sort of thing. So it's quite a famous point in history. But you talk about sliding doors moment. That's what this playoff final was. Just gone. You look at Forest now, Premier League, probably there.
Couldn't have lost it either, really, should they? It was dodgy decisions and whatever you want to say, wasn't it? Really.
But that goes back to when we played Sheffield Wednesday in the playoff semi-final. Since that moment, they went down to League One and have had a terrible time, and I know they're going to get promoted this season, but they've never recovered from that semi-final. We went on and did what we did, and that's what football is. It's just constant sliding door moments.
Yeah, and we just happen to be on the wrong side of it all the time, nearly, or it feels like it. I tell you.
But, cheers for Mark's getting involved there. I love that.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thanks for that. Really appreciate that. So, just to sum up, then it's West Brom, it's Norwich next. It's not easy. What do you think? Do you think there's a possibility we can see a Warnock special here?
No. Let's just end the show there. Is that all right? No, it's not happening, is it? 3-1 loss on Saturday. With Carlos ripping his shirt off and cheering in front of us. And I think 2-1 to Norwich. I just think there'll be both defeats. And it's not out of trying from Warnock or the players, but we ain't got the quality to stay up.
No. I think we're going to see it. I think we're going to get a Warnock special. And I think you'll come on next week's show and you'll be beaming.
Not ripping my shirt off, saying nice no promotion. What's his what's that lad's name that does the YouTube with his dad? Bolton fans.
Fogden or something.
Fogden, that's it. I don't watch him because he's one of them YouTubers that applies to 13-year-olds in terms of his audience base. But yeah, Thogdab, when he's there at Bolton, and I think it's that season they don't get promotion, and they're already outside the thing with the champagne out there, and they blast it open. And, I smell promotion.
Oh, brilliant! Good. So, Chris, what about you? What are you saying? Yeah, giving us your predictions.
Chris, you've been quiet. Come on.
I'll go down the middle. To be fair, I think it's going to be what would be a good point, but completely not enough kind of thing. So I'll go for a 1-1 draw.
Oh,
for both games?
Which game?
I mean, in the West Brom game, because I know that it would mean more for you to get points out of Corberan than it probably would Wagner in some respects. I think the Norwich game, I don't know. It's a tough call. You kind of think, is David going to be a little bit kind? You know, what do you like? I mean, the thing is, they're still in a race for the playoffs, aren't they, Norwich, to an extent? As a West Brom.
The thing
if you can come out of both games with 2 points, that would usually be a good return, excluding, of course, the circumstances that you're in.
Yeah, the thing with the West Brom game, it would be like a Rocky Balboa fight, but you know, a bit of tension behind it. The Norwich game, it'll be like when Prince William and Kate go round and a nice waving at the villagers in like David will come out at tunnel and wave like, you know what I mean. So it'll be a bit like a procession really on that Tuesday.
Yeah, well, we'll wait and see what we. Steve, pleasure as always. Thank you so much for joining us, mate. And we'll just see. We'll see what the week brings. What with for most of our teams across the region, because we've been saying what a difficult year it's been for a lot of us, apart from Bradford City, which everybody wants to hear about.
Can't wait for 2023 to be over already.
Yeah. Steve, take it easy, mate.
See you later.
See you later, pal. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. There we go. That's sometimes the best way to deal with it, isn't it? Just talk about history instead of the present when it's like that.
Nostalgic look backs. Let's ignore the present, ignore the worrying prospect of the future, and focus on nostalgia and history.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's about pretty much all we've got time for on this week's show, the Route 1 show. Thank you very much for watching. If you watched us live, please do hit a like on the video, send us some comments through. If you're watching this through on record, please, let us know what you thought of this week's show and our teams here in the region. Don't forget to subscribe as well. We'll be back tomorrow, actually, because we're going to be chatting all things non-league. So we're going to be looking at Halifax Town, Bradford Park Avenue, Guiseley, Liversedge, Farsley as well. So exciting stuff tomorrow. I've been Steven Browne. With me has been Chris Bell. Chris, thank you very much.
No worries at all, mate. Pleasure as always.
And we'll be back next week.